This 6th of May, Northampton Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition are standing 5 candidates across West Northamptonshire. We're standing because we are fed up of politicians who claim to have our interests at heart but consistently vote through cuts and privatise our public services. This action did nothing to prevent the council from going bankrupt twice over, leaving people without work and vulnerable citizens fighting for their services.
We're a kind of failed state. We're like the Somalia of England, aren't we? Only we haven't even got the revenue coming in from that piracy.
TUSC candidates understand that the money is there. It's simply going into the wrong hands.
More than £37,000 was channelled to David McIntosh's campaign while he was leader of Northampton Council. The police are investigating what happened to millions of pounds in loan money to rebuild Northampton Town FC's stadium.
The cobbler's loan wasn't the only questionable business deal the council made. It's just that this time they were caught out. TUSC candidates have been speaking out against privatisation and PFI schemes in Northampton.
Currently we've only got Stagecoach as the only form of local transport around.
Where they are able to, unfortunately, reap the rewards of that monopoly. It's okay saying they pay extortionate bus fares. Well, why is that? It's because they're allowed to charge that.
I disagree with council tax increases. I think there's much better ways of spending money. I think one of the first places we can start is to scrap these PFI schemes. Most of them have already been paid. They're just getting paid interest now.
It has actually been reported that Greenwood Dale has had to give up 2 of its schools simply because of the failures.
They've made their money. These fat cats made their money. Yeah. Take it back into public ownership, run democratically.
The local Labour Party have missed an open goal over the town's bankruptcy. Rather than calling for emergency council elections like many TUSC candidates did, they called for unelected commissioners to be brought in.
And will he join with Sally Keeble, Gareth Eales and Beth Miller, Labour's candidates in Northamptonshire, in calling for commissioners to be appointed to fix this mess?
In reality, the introduction of commissioners and the splitting of Northampton into 2 authorities has brought no comfort to the people of Northampton, who risk continued cuts to their jobs and services.
Currently, the Tories have been ruling this council with an iron fist that has cost us so much money. We've had our services cut. We've had vital services for women cut in particular.
Offices in which women they can report their domestic related violence are being cut.
Delpy Park is the 3rd most dangerous park in Northampton town, and it's no surprise with the continuous setbacks of cuts. Local youth in this community feels like they have no options but into committing crime.
We will stand against all cuts, but we'll also fight to reinstate these services. Services like the libraries actually provide so much more than just books and places to read.
Austerity was a choice. Now, either on the national level because it was a political choice, or on a local level because actually our council's priorities were not on the families of Northamptonshire.
Northampton Council is failing to solve its housing crisis. Despite promises of council house building programmes, there remains a significant shortage of social housing.
But these buildings could have been used for homes, they could have been used for businesses if they'd been taken by councils into public ownership.
Because there is empty buildings which could be repurposed for council properties and for redevelopment, that actually is allowed to go into the hands of private investors.
As for HMOs, of course they're an issue, but not because they exist. They exist to fill a hole in the housing market, because plainly there's not enough social housing.
Inequality in this area in Northampton has been a massive issue for people from Eastern Europe, and we've seen that with what happened at the Greencore factory. These are low-paid workers who are having to live in shared accommodation where it's very difficult to be socially distancing from each other, and even more difficult if you have to isolate within your home.
Poverty has been an important subject in the lead up to this election. TUSC candidates understand the causes of poverty, but more importantly, how to tackle it.
Poverty is an issue of capitalism.
Inequality is overwhelmingly a class issue. I stood up in a council session a couple of years back and asked, why the elderly, why children being targeted for these austerity measures. And I don't think the living wage is enough. I think it should be a minimum of £12 per hour as a step towards £15 per hour.
And what TUSC proposes to do for families, it is the restart and the regeneration of those services that we've lost. Firstly, by bringing them back in-house. The charitable sector has a fantastic role to play, but that role is not to replace the duty that its state and every council has to its citizens.
The pandemic has seen huge community efforts in Northampton, with volunteers and charities making up the shortfall for lost services.
A semi-long community exchange is one of the many projects around the Northampton town area, which helps homeless people and people struggling financially throughout these pandemic times. Meanwhile, the council are standing around and doing nothing.
I don't trust politicians. What makes TUSC candidates different?
I don't trust politicians either.
I agree with you.
Yep, I don't either. TUSC candidates understand why so many people aren't voting. We understand why people are dismissive of politicians and of the electoral process being capable of bringing about any fundamental change. We look at the legacy of what was achieved by the Liverpool Labour Council under Militant's leadership in the 1980s.
The Liverpool City Council are defending jobs and services, and I'm prepared to fight with the City Council to defend these jobs and services.
Beggy! We say to those Labour authorities, you should do what Liverpool did and defy the guidelines of the Tories.
Instead of hundreds of proposed job cuts, the council created hundreds of jobs. Instead of selling council homes, the Liverpool Council invested in urban regeneration programmes which transformed some of the most deprived communities.
In spite of all the consequences of surcharge, of removal from office, of job victimisation, of crippling debts, if we had the same choice, we'd go down exactly the same road. Because to do anything else would have been a complete betrayal of the working class who elected us to office.
Northampton TUSC relaunched at the start of this year, and we've already been inundated with support.
I'm voting TUSC.
I'm voting for TUSC.
I'm voting TUSC.
I'm voting TUSC.
But we can achieve so much more in the future if you join the effort.
So on 6th of May, give us your vote. But let's go beyond that. Get involved, get in touch, and be part of a campaign to fight back against cuts and privatisation in Northampton.